I'll do the problems kind of one piece at a time here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just do the current inventory problem. And once again, just conceptually speaking, what all current inventory is doing is if I feed it the company, all it will do is it will go through every single item that I have. It will multiply the cost by the quantity, and it will add up all the total, right? So hard shell total will be 200, soft shell total would be 150, 500, 550, 150, etc., all the way down. And when I add up everything, including cash, my order should total, the total of my inventory should be 1,170. So let's get started on that, right? So Tacocat Inc. Tacocat Inc. dot current inventory. I can do this right here, right? So before anyone gets intimidated, once again, look, all I'm doing, right, is you can think of this as a function, or you can think of this as, at this point, it's just another key, right? This is a key, and this is a value. I could also just as easily do something like this as well. They're the exact same thing, okay? So I'm making current inventory into a function. I don't need to take in any arguments because once again, notice how, well, one of the better ways to do this is when you look at the sample code, just kind of see how they're using it. The way they're using it, it looks like they're not passing anything, right? In fact, the method just kind of reads it from Tacocat Inc. directly. So we know that we're probably going to deal with some variation of this. Okay, cool. So the way that we want to do this, and it looks like is Tacocat Inc. is an object, right? So I have my total, and I'll start with 0. And then I need to go through every single item on here, right? So I'll do for let, I'll say like item in, I'll say this. Sounds weird, but that should work. And actually, why don't I just do this? If I console log out item, as I write the code, this will tell me if I'm on the right track. So I'm just gonna comment out the things down here for now, just because they're gonna print out probably other things that make it harder for me to see what's going on. Okay, so when I run this now, I see, yep, so far this looks good. I have my gourmet items, my cache, and obviously notice this is a tricky part here. Hey, this is a key inside this object, right? So this exists. And so therefore, when I do my for let item in this, what I really need to be careful about is I really need to just make sure that I'm adding it up for gourmet shell, for cache, but not for current inventory, okay? So I'll say, actually, and then how about this? Why don't I also just do a type of, and then I'll do this item. So now this will tell me not just what the shells are, but what they look like. And it looks like the 4 things I want to add here are objects. This is a number, and current inventory, it's not a function. Great. So now, based on this, what I can actually start doing is I have a quick and easy way to make sure that I'm not going to count the current inventory, right? In fact, what's going to happen if I try to count it, it's actually going to break. So I'll say this. I'll say if type of this item is equals to number, and that's going to represent my cache. All I have to do is total plus or equal this item. Yep. Actually, I'll create a temporary variable here, and because I notice myself, I'm going to be typing this index item quite a bit. This is probably just a shorter way for me to get around this. And then so far, all I've done in my code is I've gone through every single key. Value is the value associated with this key. And then if I do the type of value as a number, which means it's a cache, then all I'm going to do is I'm going to add that cache number to my total. Everyone good so far? Any questions? Sure. Console.log out value. Right, so at every instance, value is just the value of the guy. Yeah, let's call this key. It might be a little bit easier just so we can kind of keep our key value pairs denotation. And notice how now I do is change key in 2 places and the rest of it works, right? So this is almost an identical printout of this item up here. These are the values, okay? Okay, so I've already handled this code now to say that if the value is a number, then I know it's cache. And I guess here, all I have to do is else if, and I'll say type of value equals object. Notice how I don't actually need to skip function. Like I don't need to do like a if type of value equals function skip, right? Because by default, my if checks to see if it's a number, my else if checks to see if it's an object. And if I end my code right here, then by default, if something is a function, then it just skips it automatically. Because I notice a lot of times people write code, or in some of the workshops, people have done something like this. But really, there's no need to, right? Like by default, if I reach the end of my loop, it's going to continue, and if I don't hit the else, then nothing happens. And so I can just kind of leave it here, right? And now all I really have to do is kind of calculate the total of this. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, here's kind of where the tricky part is, right? What is value in this case? As we can see here, value is another object. Okay, so what I actually need to do here is I actually need to do a nested object. And so here I'll call it food item in value. Okay, and if I just console.log out food item, you'll notice how now when I do this, I'm actually just printing out all of the second level, right? If it's a number, then I don't hit it. If it's a function, then I skip it, right? So the only thing I'm printing out are for these 4 items. What are the keys I'm looking at? And yep, hard, soft, salmon, tuna, etc., all the way to the very end, okay? So now for every food item, I have access to the item. And so now all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to add the value of that item to my total, right? So then total becomes, and I'll put a parentheses here to make sure we're actually really super clear on what we're dealing with here. I'll say let food item, I'll call it INV, inventory. It's just equal to value dash food item, and let me just do another console log here so everyone can make sure that they're following along here. Food item INV is equal to food item INV. And so before I had the name of the item, right? I had catnip. Now I just have the actual value associated with that key. And so in order for me now to take this last step here and just calculate the total, it's pretty much just food item, oh sorry, I misspelled this, food item INV dot cost multiplied by food item INV dot quantity. And if I go through all of this and I hit my return total, if I do this, and this should give me 1,710, I believe, right? Yep. And so this is pretty much the function, right? I notice how so one, and this is why I say indentation is kind of a pain, but you also really should do it. Like when I look at this code, it's pretty clear to me kind of what it is, right? Like everything inside of here belongs to this for loop. Everything inside of here belongs to this else statement, right? At any point I look based purely on the spacing, I kind of know which level, like how deep in the item I'm going. So yep. So on the first iteration, all I go through is I go through all the keys here. I check the value, and then all this loop really is doing is that if it's a number that I know I'm dealing with cache, and I just add it directly to my current inventory. Otherwise, if it's a object that I know I actually need to go in and for each item inside that other object, I add the cost of the item multiplied by the quantity of the item, and to the total. And so at the end of it, once I add up everything else, I should be good to return my total. Question here, I know somehow got it. Cool. So yep, that's it for current inventory. Any questions so far? Very good. All right, then let me really quickly go through sale. What that takes an order object, returns the price of the order, updates the inventory, and adds the price of the order to the current company's cash box. That's pretty involved function. Okay, so now let's take a look at. I'm just going to remove this really quick. So now let's take a look at the second part of the problem here. Okay, an order looks like this. It looks like an object, and it looks like it's an object with a key and the value is just this thing here. And I guess why does it give 7? What is it return exactly? Returns the price of the order. Okay, yep. So the price of the order is hard treat shell plus a salmon. So I see. Hard shell treat costs 2, salmon costs 5. So I add them, I guess 7. Okay. So I guess what we're really saying here is the order is a list of these items, and every row is just one quantity, right? So here I'm only buying 1 shell. Here I'm only buying 1 salmon. So I guess that's an assumption that they're making here. Great. Okay. So and once again, because this is a function, I'm just gonna write it here. And then if they don't like that and make me want to change it later, fine, I'll do it later. Okay. So here I'll just call this. Actually, you know what? I'll call this new order, just so I can differentiate it from the other order variables floating around the page. Notice how if I put order in here, this is totally fine, right? Because when we start dealing with scope, anytime I use order between lines 51 through 53, it will look to this version order, not this order. So this is fine, but just in case anyone else is reading my code, I don't want to get confused, I'm going to use new order, right? Introduce a brand new variable, so if someone looks at it, there's no possible way they're going to confuse this variable with anything else on the page. And all I'm really doing is I'm just going to go through the orders, right? So for I'll call it order item in new order. Okay, so I'll let price equal 0, right? So this is how much I'm going to charge a customer. So beginning, obviously, everything's always 0. Oh, sorry. And what I'll do here is order item is going to be gourmet shell, right? And then I'll create a variable. And sorry, this is a little bit confusing. I'll call specific item is equal to new order item. Okay, so I'll make a comment here just so everyone can see. Order item is equal to gourmet shell. Okay. On the other hand, specific item is equal to, let's say, hard treat shell. Okay. So that's what the differentiation of these two things are. It's a little bit confusing to keep track in your head. And also, this is why sometimes when you talk about layers of nesting, why having 10 having 2 or more brackets in a row is a little bit confusing. People are like, oh god, what am I reading? Okay, so this we just kind of keep it a little bit clean. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to add the cost of this item to the price, and let me just take a look at it. Yep, for this one, there's a quantity and a cost. Okay, cool. So all I have to do now is do price. Yep. So okay, so I would do this, right? This is my Tacocat ink still. So this, and I can't do dot anymore because I need to access gourmet shell, and because I'm using a variable, I have to use bracket notation. This order item specific item. Okay, so this is gonna say Tacocat ink dot gourmet shell dot heart tree shell dot quantity minus minus, right? So this decreases the quantity by 1. And then I will do the same thing here, except I'm just going to do except now instead of going to quantity, I'm going to the cost, and I'm just going to write cost plus or equal the cost of this item, and then as my last line of code, all I do is return the price. And so now what I'm doing is I'm going through every single order. The first thing I do is I go to Tacocat Inc. and then I go 2 layers down into the levels of nesting. I go to the quantity and I decrement it by 1, right? Because once I sell an item, my quantity obviously goes down. And the second thing is then I go to my price variable and I add that order item, that specific item, and I add the cost of this to the price. And I guess one more thing I forgot to do is let I'll say cost equal. Sorry, this. The reason I'm doing this here is because one thing I also forgot to do is I forgot to add the however much the customer pays me. I need to add that cash into the cost. Okay. So the price goes up by the cost. My cash goes up by the cost. My inventory goes down by 1 because I only sold 1 item. I do this for every single order in this customer's order. And so this should be good now. Let me just copy and paste this over to make sure it is good. And then I will take questions. Then I want to answer questions in case I did this wrong. Okay, so there's that, and then there's that. Okay, so let's run it. I'm sorry? Oh, is it not running? Did it fail? Sorry, what was that? Right before. Put a comma here? It shouldn't make a difference, yeah. Because this is all both on the global scope. I just don't know why this is failing right now. Oh, ha! Ta-da! Sorry, this is dumb of me. It's a function. I meant to create this function. I didn't mean to run it. JavaScript was saying, oh, you're trying to run the sale function. It doesn't exist. Cool. Okay, I was missing a function keyword. So now when I run it, cool. Okay, I'm failing a test. What did I fail? Current inventory does not include cash in the return value. Huh. Expected 2710 to equal 7. Okay, so I'm clearly very close. Yeah, totally. Let's take a look. Well, here we can just actually really quickly just check, right? So which test is this? Actually, if I click into it, it will tell me. Or not. Or it will break and go blank. Okay, that failed spectacularly. Okay. Does not include cash in the return value. Does not include cash in return value. Okay, here I set cash equal to 700. I do cash return value equals cash Tacocat inventory dot current inventory. My return value should be 1710. And it's not. Oh, that's interesting. Why is that? So basically what they're saying is, hey, you know how like initially by default all this inventory costs 1710? Wait, this is something wrong with the test? Yo. Oh. Oh, you're right. You're right. It's just my company's inventory. Good catch. Great. So, wow. So actually, I can delete all of this, right? Because then the only thing I care about is if something is an object. So I'll skip both the cache and the function. Deleting code is very satisfying. I'll be quite honest. Yay. Okay, that was it. Thank you for whoever pointed that out. Cool. Okay, so this is a solution. Let me just delete it here too, so you guys all have the latest and greatest. And then I'll save this, and then I will share this on our Slack channel. So now everyone should have this Tacocat solution. Great. Okay, so awesome. Now that we have the right answer, happy to take questions. I'll move this up here too so everyone can see a little bit better. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So bracket notation you can always use for anything. Um, bracket notation will work for any key you're trying to access. Dot notation only works if you know exactly what the key is going to be called. So here, if I do, for example, actually I'll do this down here. This line over here. So notice how I do new order bracket order item. If I do new order dot order item, this is saying new order string order item, and it will fail. Okay, this is how these two lines are different. And so if you ever have a variable that represents a key, you can only ever use bracket notation. If you have the exact name of the key, you can use either dot or bracket notation. If you're getting confused, especially when you're first kind of starting off and learning the different notations, always just always use bracket notation because it's guaranteed to work in more situations than dot notation. All objects. Yep. Yeah. One really painful thing that that people also eventually find is it's actually, yeah, it's if my key has a space in it, right? So if let's say my uh, so actually this yep, yeah, so let's say this was called like gourmet shell space like this. This is totally valid JavaScript, right? This is gourmet shell. But even I have this gourmet shell string, I can never use dot notation to represent that because of the space in the middle. So this is another instance in which you can only ever use bracket notation. So bracket notation really is just like the safer option, kind of universally speaking. It just looks uglier and is slightly more typing, but it will always work. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? All right, I think I've lost maybe one person every 5 minutes or so for the past 20 minutes. So that's why we are at six now. But yeah, you all have access to this repo now. And then tomorrow we will be covering pass by reference versus pass by value. So I will hopefully see everyone there. I will also